If you're frustrated with watercolor puddles, I'm going to show you a couple different ways, not only to prevent them from happening, but also how to fix it if it does happen. Just so you know, don't beat yourself up over these watercolor puddles. Why is that so hard to say? Because it will happen to everyone. You're using a little bit too much water and you won't really know it until it's on the paper. But there are ways to prevent it from happening, and it just comes with practice and making sure that you swipe off your brush on the edge of your cup before you go to your paper to get rid of any excess water is a good tip. But let's just say I am painting this big peony. Most of your big, watercolor puddle frustrations will come from a really light section where you're just painting with mostly water on your brush. Like for example, this petal right here. And also if you're using a larger brush, it's a lot easier to create watercolor puddles. So if you can get away with something, being done on a smaller brush, then try it with the smaller brush because you won't pick up so much water on the brush. It doesn't hold as much water as a big brush like this size 16. But let's just say we have a huge puddle of watercolor or water right here. This is gonna create hard lines, it's gonna create a huge mess and just kind of like a blob effect. So what you can do is just soak it up. I usually just tear off a section of my paper towel and I go over to the edge or wherever there's too much water and I just let it soak up that pigment into the paper towel. If I dab, I'm gonna create this texture on the petal and I don't want that. So I'm just going over here and let's do it again over here too. Just letting it soak before it dries. So you need to make sure that you are aware of where it's happening, where these puddles are happening. And it happens to a lot of people on the tip of leaves. So I'm gonna paint a big leaf here and I'm gonna have too much water on my brush. And we're gonna paint a leaf. And because the tip of the leaf is where you're ending, most likely, you're gonna get this puddling of pigment and water, and that's gonna dry and there's gonna be a really hard puddle line around that green. So we don't want that. So we're gonna do the same thing. You can also use a dry brush. So I'm grabbing a smaller brush, drying it off really well, and I'm just going to kind of roll on top of that and soak it up. Or you can use the paper towel too if you feel better about that. So every time I soak up some of this green, I'm going back to my paper towel and wiping it off so that my brush stays really dry. This is all very normal though. This is watercolor, you're using water to paint with, and there's going to be times where you're going super fast or your brush is just holding more than you think it is, and you'll need to do this from time to time. And like these petals up here, I'm starting to notice as it's drying more that we've got some puddling happening. So we're just always being mindful of these petals, and if we don't want them, we're dabbing them up. We're soaking them up with our dry brush, and then we won't get those nasty hard lines. But 2 ways to prevent them from happening. You want to make sure that if you don't necessarily need a huge brush, then use a smaller brush. And you can also swipe off potentially excess water that can be on your brush in your water jar like so before you go to your paper. Basically, to know if you have too much water on your brush, if you go to your paper and your brush is literally dripping and you start to see a little drip of water forming, like it's about to drop, that's too much water. That's gonna create a puddle. So I either like to go to my paper towel and dab that off, or swipe it off on the edge of my cup and then paint. But the consistency just feels like a slightly damp brush. Obviously, if we're doing huge sections like a night sky or a wash that covers your entire paper, then we need a lot more water. But if we're doing these smaller sections, like little petals like this, you don't need tons of water to move the pigment in an area that long. So it's just gonna take practice. It's gonna take being mindful of where puddles are forming so that you catch it early before it dries. And there you have it. There you have it. More amazing tips are on this channel. There you have it. I hope that was helpful for you. It was a quick and easy tip that I know is going to improve your watercolor instantly. Let me know in the comments below if this was something that you've been struggling with and wondering, like, let me know in the comments below if that was you. Also, check out our Patreon channel we just launched. We've got tons and tons of other amazing tutorials, monthly Patreon only tutorials for certain tiers, and also live monthly art classes as well. But all of the content on Patreon is ad-free, so if the ads are just a vibe kill for you, I totally get it. However, we put so much effort into all of these YouTube videos, and so we, to make just a few extra bucks, it's not much, but to make a few extra bucks, the ads really do help us with all the time that we put into these YouTube videos. So if you want to do ad-free videos, we've got a $2 a month tier where you can pay $2 a month and access all of these YouTube tutorials ad-free, not free because you spend $2 a month, ad-free. And that's pretty awesome. And we have other tiers with a lot of other fun stuff in it, so make sure you go check it out. Our Patreon is blossoming and awesome. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.